Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beguiled by Books. Today, I've got for you my June 2024 reading wrap up. Let's get started. June was a bit busier than I expected. We ended up taking a little impromptu weekend getaway, and we are planning for some other pretty big trips we've got coming up later this year. So I didn't read as much. I've been reading 15 to 18 books a month lately. And this month I'm only at 11 books, which I am fine with. That's still plenty of books to be getting through in a month. The first two books I finished in June were the last two books of a 6-book series I started in May, which was the Salacious Players Club series by Sarah Kate. And I read Highest Bidder and Madam. Now, from what I understand, the first 4 books were going to be the original 4, and then Sarah Kate, the author, ended up adding the last 2 books. And you can kind of tell in the storyline that they were additions to the series. I still very much enjoyed Madam, and there's some fun stuff in there in both of those books, but it is what it is. If you only had to read 4 of the 6 books, I'd pick the first 4 and skip the last 2, but I still started June with those 2 books, which was a nice easing into the month. The next book I read was White is for Witching, and I picked this up at my local bookstore, and I love any book that's kind of weird and gothic and witchy and quirky. I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm in a weird girl book phase right now, so I was all about it. But this book was so different that it just is beyond me. It wasn't written in a traditional narrative structure, and I just didn't understand what the storyline was. It was really confusing. I wanted to love it, but I really pushed through the book and all the way to the end, and I did finish it, but it was a drag. It took me way longer, and I think that book is actually part of the reason why I didn't read as many books in June, because I had to take a break after that one and just reassess my books and figure out what I actually wanted to read. Not my favorite, but there's a book out there for everyone, and maybe this book you will actually love and can tell me what it is about. Let me know if you have read it, and let me know if you liked it. The next book I got was a hold I had at the library that finally came through, and that is Come As You Are. I've talked about Come As You Are and Come Together before, and I was able to get this one. I skimmed through Come As You Are, and I do think Come Together, the second book, was more enjoyable from a nonfiction perspective. I learned more in Come Together than I did in Come As You Are. But there's a lot of benefit, I think, in the book Come As You Are if you are very unfamiliar with that topic and you're curious to learn kind of the beginning stages of that world. So it's all about, your individual sexuality and what that means and things like that. So can be a touchy topic for some people, but if you're curious, I think that is a really great place to start. Like I said, I personally preferred Come Together, the second book that the author wrote, and I think that one just had a bit more intersections and breadth to it, which is why I preferred the second one, Come Together. But Come As You Are was a really good one as well, and I would recommend it if you are interested. The next book I had been working through slowly as I fell asleep every night reading in bed. It was The Viking Heart, How Scandinavians Conquered the World. And if you've been following along for a little while, I've been on a Scandinavian history kick and been trying to consume lots of different pieces of Scandinavian history. And this is one of many books that I have read recently in that vein. And The Viking Heart started really strong. I really enjoyed the ancient history and how it correlates to some of the traditions that we hold still in the United States today and kind of North America. It was really interesting. It got pretty dry in the middle, and truth be told, I don't remember a lot after about the 40% mark, but I remember the end was very enjoyable, and I liked how the author wove his Scandinavian heritage into the story and what that means for kind of like mid 20th century immigrants from Scandinavia to the United States and how that permeates today's culture. So it was a really cool look at two different worlds and how they've come together over the years. The next book I read was an ARC. I was super excited to get this. It's called Nexus, and I've read this author's work for a long time. I first read Sapiens way back when it came out, and have since read the author's additional books. And I was really excited to get Nexus because it's all about the AI revolution and what that could mean. What I struggled with while reading Nexus was the hyperbolic nature of the author's story. So the author took kind of the extreme ends of the spectrum of like what could happen if X happened and what could happen if Y, and extrapolated it to the nth degree and told a story from those perspectives about what could happen. And while I don't disagree about what could happen, it's harder for me as a more literal person to understand what I'm supposed to take seriously from that hyperbole. I just struggled. It was too much of like whataboutism, like what could happen and what if and what if and what if, and not really rooted in facts, which again, it's really hard to do that. I'm not knocking the author here because we don't know what we don't know with AI and with technology and how rapidly things are changing and the lack of regulation in that world. But it definitely seemed more of an alarmist type book. And I was hoping it would be more factual, based in what's going on today and how we can prevent those extremes from happening. And really, it was just talking about the extremes. So didn't do what I had hoped, but it could be a very prescient book going forward. So we'll see how that plays out in time. Taking a step back after quite a few books that I had not been thrilled to read in June, I really wanted to read something that I could just devour and love. And I got that from Tracey Deonn's Legendborn Cycle series. I read Legendborn and Bloodmarked back to back and loved it. It's a YA series, and Tracey Deonn, the author, is based in Central North Carolina, not too far from where I am. I have yet to run into her, but fingers crossed. And I absolutely fell in love with Brie Matthews, the character. She's a 16-year-old Black woman who is going to early college at UNC, and she gets magicked into this world of Arthurian legend through her own family's history of magic, and how she uncovers that and uncovers the Arthurian part of her background as well is really fascinating. And I love that there is this amazing intersection of the Arthurian Camelot Round Table legend and being a Black woman in North Carolina in the 21st century. It was phenomenally done. I absolutely devoured it, which is what I wanted to do with a book. There are going to be more books in the series. I'm already itching with anticipation to get those books and read them. I can't wait to see what happens in this saga. So if you are a fan of YA, if you are a fan of high fantasy and Arthurian legend, this is a great book that marries those two worlds together in a really fun and fantastic way. So I would absolutely recommend the Legendborn Cycle if you're interested. At the tail end of June, I read Right Thing Right Now by Ryan Holiday. Again, if you have been here for a while, y'all know I do love Ryan Holiday's books. I've been a fan of his since probably about 2018 when I heard him speak at a conference. And I've read every single one of his books that he's written. Right Thing Right Now is book 3 of the Stoic Virtue series, and there are 4 Stoic Virtues, so there will be 4 books in this series. And this Right Thing Right Now is all about justice, the value of justice. The first one is Courage is Calling, then Discipline is Destiny, and then Right Thing Right Now. And Right Thing Right Now is a really well-timed book for its release, because while the value itself is justice, Ryan Holiday notes at the very beginning, most people think of justice in terms of the legal system, but it's really about doing what's right and what is the best thing to do, not just for your individual self and situation, but for people and for society. And the premise of, what's good for the bee is good for the hive, what's good for the hive is good for the bee mentality that Marcus Aurelius talks about in Stoicism. So fascinating stories told about Truman and about Eisenhower and Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth. Really well written, well researched, excellent stories that are woven together for this overall theme of justice and doing what's right. And again, one of my favorite things, it's a short book. Ryan Holiday does not draw out his books just to get extra words on the page and pages in a novel or in a book. He doesn't write novels, but it was really well done, packs a punch in just about 300 pages. So great book to read as you're going on your summer vacations. You can easily slip it in your pocketbook or a backpack and read it in your downtime. I cannot stress how much I love this book, and I'm very much looking forward to the fourth in the series. I finished June with one fantasy book and one nonfiction. The fantasy book is The City in Glass, and I read Siren Queen earlier by the same author. And so when I saw City in Glass as an ARC, I immediately requested it, and I was so excited that I got approved because I love this author's writing style. It's punchy, it's quick. Even in a fantasy novel, it's a short book. I love a short fantasy novel. It just gets right into the details. And even though there's world building, you're not spending pages and pages describing belief systems and things like that. And while I love that as well, a quick 300-page fantasy book is always entertaining. And this one is very much in the same vein. So that was really great story around demons and the love the demon has for humans and how they interact, and very much enjoyed that. Can't wait for that to come out later this year. Then the nonfiction book that I read here at the end of June was Unmasking Autism. And I picked this up at my local bookstore completely on a whim. I have long suspected myself as being a member of the neurodivergent community, and I'm curious to always be learning more and what I can do to be more inclusive for the people that I interact with on a daily basis and to make others feel safe when they're around me. So I wanted to read Unmasking Autism to better understand the community, and I loved how the author presented the work. They did an excellent job explaining their background and what they have learned and researched, both anecdotally and academically. And then I really loved how the author had amazing stories from people from all different backgrounds. So specifically talking about neurodiverse women, Black and brown neurodivergent members of the community, trans and gender queer folks in the autism community, and what their experiences are and why so many people, especially the more intersections that one has, remain undiagnosed and often masked until very late in life or for the duration of their lives, because the neurotypical world has always been upper class white folks from Western Europe, typically, and really only started digging into the mental health world in Victorian England, which in the grand scheme of things was not that long ago. So there's so much that we don't know. The author is very aware and admits what they do and do not know, what research is and is not available with empirical data. Really well presented book, and I was so engaged by it. I read through it super quick. So this is a great book. Even if you're not a nonfiction reader, I would absolutely recommend this book if you're curious about neurodivergence and autism and ADHD and how a lot of those things overlap in people's lives. It's fascinating and, again, really well presented and a very inclusive look at a very talked about but not well understood segment of our world. 11 books, not too shabby for June. I am traveling more in July, so I will see what I can read in that month. I've got a nice big long vacation coming up, so we'll see how many books I end up reading in July, but I would love to hear what you read in June, what you loved, and what books from my list are you curious about. Drop a comment below. I'm always here. I want to chat with you more and learn about what you're reading. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day.